All right, everyone. So I have a lot to read and not a lot of time. There's not going to be any questions. This is literally just going to be me reading. So open your books to page 173 where we left off, please. Our focus, how is the conflict at Castle Rock symbolic to the novel? Okay, so the conflict is coming. Something big in the novel is about to happen. How is it symbolic? I'm going to read from this point to the end of the chapter. So you can read along with me if you'd like. The questions will be after this video on slides. Okay, so now we return back to Ralph and Piggy and Sam and Eric, who are going to try to go get Piggy's glasses back. We start 3/4 of the way down the page on 173. They set off along the beach. They set off along the beach in formation. Ralph went first, limping a little, his spear carried over one shoulder. He saw things partially through the tremble of the heat haze over the flashing sand and his own long hair and injuries. Behind him came the twins, worried now for a while, but full of unquenchable vitality. They said little but trailed the butts of their wooden spears. For Piggy found that, by looking down and shielding his tired sight from the sun, he could just see these moving along the sand. He walked between the trailing butts. Therefore, the conch held carefully between his two hands. The boys made a compact little group that moved over the beach, 4 plate-like shadows dancing and mingling beneath them. There was no sign left of the storm, and the beach was swept clean like a blade that had been scoured. The sky and the mountains were at an immense distance, shimmering in the heat, and the reef was lifted by mirage, floating in a kind of silver pool halfway up the sky. They passed the place where the tribe had danced. The charred sticks still lay on the rocks where the rain had quenched them, but the sand by the water was smooth again. They passed this in silence. No one doubted that the tribe would be found at the Castle Rock, and when they came in sight of it, they stopped with one accord. The densest tangle on the island, a mass of twisted stems, black and green and impenetrable, lay on their left, and tall grass swayed before them. Now Ralph went forward. Here was the crushed grass where they had all lain when he had gone to prospect. There was the neck of land, the ledge skirting the rock. Up there were the red pinnacles. Sam touched his arm. Smoke. There was a tiny smudge of smoke wavering into the air on the other side of the rock. Some fire. I don't think. Ralph turned. What are we hiding for? He stepped through the screen of grass onto the little open space that led to the narrow neck. You two follow behind. I'll go first. Then Piggy, a pace behind me. Keep your spears ready. Piggy peered anxiously into the luminous veil that hung between him and the world. Is it safe? Ain't there a cliff? I can't hear the sea. You keep right close to me. Ralph moved forward onto the neck. He kicked a stone and it bounded into the water. Then the sea sucked down, revealing a red, weedy square 40 feet beneath Ralph's left arm. Am I safe? Quavered Piggy. I feel awful. High above them from the pinnacles came a sudden shout and then an imitation war cry that was answered like a dozen voices from behind the rock. Give me the conch and stay still. Halt! Who goes there? Ralph bent back his head and glimpsed Roger's dark face at the top. Who can see who I am? He shouted. Stop being silly. He put the conch to his lips and began to blow. Savages appeared, painted out of recognition, edging round the ledge toward the neck. They carried spears and disposed themselves to defend the entrance. Ralph went on blowing and ignored Piggy's terrors. Roger was shouting, You mind out! See? At length, Ralph took his lips away and paused to get his breath back. His first words were a gasp, but audible. Calling an assembly! The savages guarding the neck muttered among themselves but made no motion. Ralph walked forward a couple of steps. A voice whispered urgently behind him. Don't leave me, Ralph. You kneel down, said Ralph sideways, and wait till I come back. He stood halfway along the neck and gazed at the savages intently. Freed by the paint, they had tied their hair back and were more comfortable than he was. Ralph made a resolution to tie his own back afterwards. Indeed, he felt like telling them to wait and doing it here and there, and then, but that was impossible. The savages sniggered a bit, and one gestured at Ralph with a spear. High above, Roger took his hands off the lever and leaned out to see what was going on. The boys on the neck stood in a pool of their own shadow, diminished shaggy heads. Piggy crouched, his back shapeless as a sack. I'm calling an assembly. Silence. Roger took up a small stone and flung it between the twins, aiming to miss. They started, and Sam only just kept his footing. Some source of power began to pulse in Roger's body. Ralph spoke again loudly. I'm calling an assembly. He ran his eye over them. Where's Jack? The group of boys stirred and consulted. A painted face spoke with the voice of Robert. "He's hunting, and he said we weren't to let you in." "I've come to see about the fire," said Ralph, "and about Piggy's specs." The group in front of him shifted in laughter and shivered outwards from among them. Light, excited laughter that went echoing among the tall rocks. A voice spoke from behind Ralph. "What do you want?" The twins made a bolt past Ralph and got between him and the entry. He turned quickly. Jack, identifiable by personality and red hair, was advancing from the forest. A hunter crouched on either side. All three were masked in black and green. Behind them on the grass, the headless and paunched body of a sow lay where they had dropped it. Piggy wailed, "Ralph, don't leave me!" With ludicrous care, he embraced the rocks, pressing himself to it above the sucking sea. The sniggering of the savages became a loud, derisive jeer. Jack shouted above the noise, "You go away, Ralph. You keep to your end. This is my end and my tribe. You leave me alone." The jeering died away. "You pinched Piggy's specs," said Ralph breathlessly. "You've got to give them back." "Got to? Says who?" Ralph's temper blazed out. "I say, you voted me for chief. Don't you hear the conch? You played a dirty trick. We'd be giving you fire if you'd asked for it." The blood was flowing in his cheeks, and the bunged-up eye throbbed. "You could have had fire whenever you wanted, but you didn't. You came sneaking up like a thief and stole Piggy's glasses." "Say that again. Thief! Thief!" Piggy screamed. "Ralph, mind me!" Jack made a rush and stabbed at Ralph's chest with his spear. Ralph sensed the position of the weapon from the glimpse he caught of Jack's arm and put the thrust aside with his own butt. Then he brought the end round and caught Jack a stinger across the ear. So he cut Jack's ear with his spear. They were chest to chest, breathing fiercely, pushing and glaring. "Who's a thief?" "You are!" Jack wrenched free and swung at Ralph with his spear. By common consent, they were using the spears as sabers now, no longer daring the lethal points. The blow struck Ralph's spear and slid down, to fall agonizingly on his fingers. Then they were apart once more, their positions reversed, Jack toward the castle rock and Ralph on the outside toward the island. But both boys were breathing very heavily. "Come on, then. Come on." Truculently, they squared up to each other, but kept just out of fighting distance. "You come on and see what you get. You come on." Piggy, clutching the ground, was trying to attract Ralph's attention. Ralph moved, bent down, kept a wary eye on Jack. "Ralph, remember what we came for. The fire, my specs." Ralph nodded. He relaxed his fighting muscles, stood easily, and grounded the butt of his spear. Jack watched him inscrutably through his paint. Ralph glanced up at the pinnacles, then toward the group of savages. "Listen, we've come to say this. First, you got to give back Piggy's specs. If he hasn't got them, he can't see. You aren't playing the game." The tribe of painted savages giggled, and Ralph's mind faltered. He pushed his hair up and gazed at the green and black mask before him, trying to remember what Jack looked like. Piggy whispered, "In the fire." "Oh, yes. Then about the fire. I say this again. I've been saying it ever since we dropped in." He held out his spear and pointed at the savages. "Your only hope is keeping a signal fire going as long as there's light to see. Then maybe a ship will notice the smoke and come and rescue and take us home. But without that smoke, we've got to wait till some ship comes by accident. We might wait years, till we were old." The shivering, silvery, unreal laughter of the savages sprayed out and echoed away. A gust of rage shook Ralph. His voice cracked. "Don't you understand, you painted fools? Sam, Eric, Piggy, and me, we aren't enough. We tried to keep the fire going, but we couldn't. And then you, playing at hunting," he pointed past them where to the trickle of smoke dispersed in the pearly air. "Look at that. Call that a signal fire? That's a cooking fire. Now you'll eat and there will be no smoke. Don't you understand? There may be a ship out there." He paused, defeated by the silence and the painted anonymity of the group guarding the entry. Jack opened a pink mouth and addressed Sam and Eric, who were between him and his tribe. "You two, get back." No one answered him. The twins, puzzled, looked at each other, while Piggy, reassured by the cessation of violence, stood up carefully. Jack glanced back at Ralph and then at the twins. "Grab them!" No one moved. Jack shouted angrily, I said grab them. The painted group moved around Sam and Eric nervously and unhandily. Once more, the silvery laughter scattered. Sam and Eric protested out of the heart of civilization. Oh, I say, honestly. Their spears were taken from them. Tie them up. Ralph cried out hopelessly against the black and green mass. Jack! Go on, tie them. Now the painted group felt the otherness of Sam and Eric, felt the power in their own hands. They felled the twins clumsily and excitedly. Jack was inspired. He knew that Ralph would attempt a rescue. He struck in a humming circle behind him, and Ralph only just parried the blow. Beyond them, the tribe and the twins were a loud and writhing heap. Piggy crouched again. Then the twins lay, astonished, and the tribe stood round them. Jack turned to Ralph and spoke between his teeth. See, they do what I want. There was silence again. The twins lay, inexpertly tied up, and the tribe watched Ralph to see what he would do. He numbered them through his fringe, glimpsed the ineffectual smoke. His temper broke. He screamed at Jack. You're a beast and a swine and a bloody, bloody thief. He charged. Jack, knowing this was the crisis, charged too. They met with a jolt and bounced apart. Jack swung with his fist at Ralph and caught him in the ear. Ralph hit Jack in the stomach and made him grunt. Then they were facing each other again, panting and furious but unnerved by each other's ferocity. They became aware of the noise that was the background to this fight, the steady shrill cheering the tribe behind them. Piggy's voice penetrated to Ralph. Let me speak! He was standing in the dust of the fight, and as the tribe saw his attention, the shrill cheer changed to a steady booing. Piggy held up the conch, and the booing sagged a little, then came up again to strength. I got the conch, he shouted. I tell you, I got the conch. Surprisingly, there was a silence now. The tribe was curious to hear what amusing thing he might have to say. Silence and a pause. But in the silence, a curious air noise close by Ralph's head. He gave it half his attention, and there it was again, a faint zip. Someone was throwing stones. Roger was dropping them, his one hand still on the lever. Below him, Ralph was a shock of air and Piggy a bag of fat. I got this to say. You're acting like a crowd of kids. The booing rose and died again as Piggy lifted the white, magical shell. Which is better, to be a pack of painted Indians like you are, or to be sensible like Ralph is? A great clamor rose among the savages. Piggy shouted again. Which is better, to have rules and agree, or to hunt and kill? Again the clamor, and again. Ralph shouted against the noise. Which is better, law and rescue, or hunting and breaking things up?